Welcome to Pod Save America. I'm Jon Favreau.
I'm Dan Pfeiffer.
On today's show, the Inflation Reduction Act is law. Liz Cheney is defeated. Donald Trump is still under investigation. And Dr. Oz is still looking for crudité. Then I chat with filmmaker Alex Holder, whose documentary about Trump's final days in office was subpoenaed by the January 6th committee. So that's fun. Let's get to the news. Hours after Joe Biden signed a bill that will lower the cost of healthcare and prescription drugs, crack down on billionaire tax cheats, and do more to fight climate change than any government has in history. Here was a headline in the New York Times. Even on Biden's big day, he's still in Trump's long shadow. Subhead. For the sitting president, even a triumphant ceremony to sign major domestic legislation can hardly break through the nonstop attention on his predecessor. Dan just took a deep breath. I don't know if the sigh came through. Dan, you want to give a quick take appreciator rating before we dive in?
The scale does not go high enough for this.
When you saw the headline, we knew who the author was, right? We knew who the writer was. It was a Peter Baker special.
Yes. Look, Peter Baker is a very, very smart guy. He is probably if not one of the most respected reporters in Washington. He's been around for a very long time.
He stars in the documentary that I'm about to interview Alex Holder about. He's in Alex's documentary.
Did he storm the Capitol?
Surprise! No, he's one of the people interviewed that comes up quite a bit. Yeah.
But anywho, the only way that I think someone as smart as Peter Baker could write a story this obviously stupid is two possibilities. One, his brain briefly left his body. That could happen. Two, this was a very specific and devious plot to murder me specifically by setting my blood pressure skyrocketing through the moon.
Dan had this somewhere in the outline, and I was like, I think we should just start with this. And Dan said that there was not enough coffee to get himself ready. There's the coffee for this to start with this take. To start.
Yeah, yes. I am on a 1 coffee a day regimen these days, and I went up to 1.5 coffee just to be fully prepared for this moment. So be prepared. I know we don't want to go down a rabbit hole here, but I just want to say that nothing makes me more crazy than the media passively covering the things the media has control over. This is a story about Donald Trump overshadowing Joe Biden, written by the people who are covering Donald Trump and forcing him to overshadow Joe Biden. And they are proving the point of the article by writing a story about Trump overshadowing Joe Biden, therefore overshadowing Joe Biden on his big day on that day. Like, you people have agency here. He doesn't have to overshadow him. That's a choice you made. You can't. It'd be like if Peter Baker went out and sprayed graffiti on the White House and then went out and wrote a story about vandalism afflicting the Biden administration. It's like, you did it. You're responsible for this.
So I want to come to the defense of my friend and colleague, Peter Baker. I'm a serious journalist. No, but in all seriousness, I want to talk about the actual challenge here for the Biden administration, because while it pains me deeply to admit that Peter Baker has a point, the story, that particular story, of course, ridiculous, of course, right? But going forward, the news tends to cover what's new. There won't be many more developments in the Inflation Reduction Act story. It will no longer be new. We've got the passage, we got the signing ceremony, maybe a celebration here and there, then it's over. There are constant developments in the Trump did crime story. We are going to cover them next. We're not covering them first because we have agency, Dan. We're going to talk about the Inflation Reduction Act first. But how do Democrats in the White House make sure people know what's in this bill and keep this story alive, even though the media will not be covering it for much longer?
You are correct that there is a reality at the core of this Peter Baker story, which is Donald Trump is omnipresent. To date, Biden has had trouble breaking through. Those two things are true. Like I said, just a little self-examination would have really benefited that story. But there is a challenge for the White House. And so the question is, this was a huge accomplishment. How do you let people know about your huge accomplishment in time to have them vote with that accomplishment in mind in November? And so Jen O'Malley Dillon, who was Biden's campaign manager and the White House deputy chief of staff, and Anita Dunn, who's their senior advisor and sort of like messaging guru, wrote this memo to Ron Klain that found its way, I'm sure not by accident at all, into Politico. And they list a whole bunch of things they're doing. It's a well thought out plan. I have written many of those memos over the years.
Yeah.
Everything in their memo I would do. I think it's the right thing to do.
These days you call them message box. The message box letters.
Yes,
now they're public.
Yeah. Yes. Instead of just leaking them to, I cut out the middleman, right? Instead of slipping it like to Ryan Lizza, I sent it out to the world, right? Call me Mr. the most transparent memo writer in history. Anywho, like I said, I'm over caffeinated. There's I think to the extent I have any advice on how Democrats should deal with this, and I think it's not just the Biden White House, it's every Democrat on the ballot everywhere. House, Senate, governor, dog catcher, whatever, is a couple of things. One, when we think about our media strategy about how to get people to know about this, we have to work backwards from the audience. How do the people we need to reach get the information? And the people we need to reach are people who are largely deciding whether they're going to vote or not, right? And I think one core group here is young people who we know care passionately about climate. We also know they are the group that has moved most dramatically against Biden since 2020 in terms of approval rating. And so here you have this huge accomplishment. How do you make sure they know? So you got to work backwards based on where they get their information, what media outlets, what platforms, what influencers, all of that. Because what we know is that no amount of like Rose Garden ceremonies, trips to Ohio to, unveil some grant that was, that's covered by the local news is going to reach those people. So how do you reach them? Related to that, imperative number 2 is come on, Pod Save America.
That is true. That is true.
I mean, it is. I mean, that is the answer to all things.
Hey, Joe.
And
Hey, Joe, come on.
I'm somewhat kidding, but not really, which is in a world in which where you say the media won't cover new things, you have to over-index your media strategy on outlets who will give you the opportunity to tell your story on your terms to your people. So whether that's Pod Save America, other progressive outlets, you have to do that. Next is have to recognize that if the media won't cover what happened in the past, what their true bias is, the thing they thirst for is conflict.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
So don't talk about what you did, but spend just as much time talking about what Republicans tried to stop you from doing or what they voted against. And so lean into it. And there is this report I read somewhere, or I made up in my head, I'm not entirely sure which, and I'm sure someone with Google can figure it out, that Biden's going to give a big speech in a couple of weeks that is going to sort of lay out the contrast for the midterm, so that's good. And the last thing is, like Peter Baker, we have agency. Right? We can go tell people about it. We don't have to wait for the New York Times. We can decide whether Biden gets overshadowed by Trump by sharing with our friends, posting on social, et cetera.
And I think it's key to figure out what the most popular parts of the bill are, how to talk about the bill, right? Like I've struggled with this too. It's the the biggest investment in climate change in history. But when you look at the Navigator research had some polling out this morning on the most popular parts of the bill, and it's very simple and not very sexy. Lowering healthcare costs, lowering prescription drug costs, lowering energy bills. Lowering families' energy bills by $1,800, which is what the bill will do, is more popular and more effective than talking about sweeping climate action. Now, sweeping climate action and the biggest climate investment ever, that could be more effective with some of the younger voters that you were just talking about. But I do think for most people in the country, hearing that these investments in clean energy are actually going to lower their energy bills because clean energy is cheaper than dirty energy at this point, is going to make a big difference with people. But look, I think it's a huge challenge. All the focus groups I did for the wilderness were before the Inflation Reduction Act passed, except for the last one I just did in Atlanta. I stayed in Atlanta to do one after our show. And we got some work to do with those voters. It was 9 voters around a table, and they were complaining that Joe Biden and the Democrats hadn't done anything. These people do not like Republicans at all. They think they're extreme. There's no chance they'll vote for Brian Kemp or any Republicans, but they were very unhappy with Joe Biden and the Democrats. And I said, well, have you heard about the bill that Congress just passed that President Biden's about to sign tomorrow? And one person in the group had heard about it. And everyone else was surprised by that person started saying, I think it's something about healthcare and climate. And they're like, what? He did something on climate finally? I didn't know that. No one knew. And this is while it was in the news.
And this is ultimately the huge challenge, is if you were communicating through traditional press, you're reaching no one who is not already decided about whether they're going to vote and who they're going to vote for. And like, those people they're not watching CNN, they're not reading the New York Times, they're not on Twitter. And that's why we have to think more creatively. This is really hard, right? It's
really hard. I think that the Biden administration has been doing this, or maybe I'm just imagining it, but like, calculators about what it means for you, how much money you're going to save on either with ACA subsidies, with prescription drugs, on energy bills. Like, I think just having done all these focus groups, people are most interested in, like, of course, what's going to make a difference in my life? How is this going to change my life? Because I did get some comments over the course of the focus groups like, oh, there was this big infrastructure bill that passed, but all the roads in my state are still broken, and there's too many potholes still, and why don't I see anything from the infrastructure bill has changed anything? I heard it was going to do stuff and it hasn't done anything. And I do think there's this hunger out there for government to do something that's going to improve their lives in some measurable way. Now, the challenge with this bill is a lot of the provisions that are going to make a difference for people aren't going to take effect for a while, but letting people know what's coming to them and what's going to happen, I think that's going to be really important for the Biden administration to get out there. And every Democrat, like you said, and all of us, we all have agency here. All right, so now we did that. Now we can go to the Trump did crime story.
Because Joe Biden is overshadowing Trump's criminality. Is that a problem for Democrats? Tune in next week at the New York Times.
So there are quite a few new developments worth talking about. In the Mar-a-Lago investigation, we learned that the Justice Department is still investigating Trump's decision to hide nuclear secrets in his beach house. They said that they're still interviewing witnesses, including former White House counsel Patsy Baloney and his deputy. There's a report about that. We also learned that one reason the FBI finally got a search warrant is that they saw something alarming on the Mar-a-Lago surveillance footage that they subpoenaed. In Georgia, we learned that Trump's former attorney, Mr. Rudolph Giuliani, has been told that he's a target of the criminal investigation into the attempt to overturn the last election. He sat with the grand jury yesterday. They finally got Rudy to testify. We also learned that his buddy Lindsey Graham has been ordered by a federal judge to testify. Graham is appealing that because he doesn't want to testify. And in New York, we learned that Alan Weisselberg, Trump's longtime chief financial officer, just pled guilty to all 15 felonies he's been charged with related to the tax scheme he ran for Trump's business. Lot of potential crimes there, and real crimes in the case of Alan Weisselberg. Dan, we also learned that Trump is apparently having a hard time finding a lawyer who's willing to represent him in all this mess, which I thought was funny because on one hand, Trump is having a hard time finding a lawyer who's willing to represent him. On the other hand, we found out that Shane Goldmacher at the New York Times reported that there were 2 days over the last couple of weeks since the FBI search warrant where he raised $1 million from donors on each day, which are like the 2 best days he's had in a long, long time in fundraising. So having a real hard time getting a lawyer to represent him for his legal troubles, but on the political side, his Republican support and the money that's coming in from Republicans has never been better. What's going on there?
Well, I think you could probably break it down like this, is that no Republican elected official or party official who has backed Donald Trump through any of his crimes, dating back 5-6 years now, has paid a real political price for having done so. Right? There is the people who pay the price, as we will talk about in the next segment, are the people who oppose Trump. Now, for attorneys, that is something different. You mentioned Rudy Giuliani is a target of a criminal investigation. How did he find himself in that position? By being Donald Trump's attorney.
Yeah.
And it is not because Donald Trump is likely guilty. We should be very clear about that. Guilty people deserve representation, of course. And particularly rich, guilty white men never have trouble getting attorneys, right? That happens all the time.
Yeah.
What is unique about Trump is I think he is such a terribly dangerous client that he keeps getting. If you try to defend Trump from his crimes, you somehow become a participant in his crimes. Like, take the example of the affidavit that was signed that claimed that all of the materials that the National Archives wanted had been returned when they absolutely had not. That is probably because, and I'm speculating here, Trump told his attorneys that they had all been returned. So his attorney put their name on a legally binding document saying that. And so in general, most lawyers don't want to end up on the other side. Like they don't have to go hire their own attorney from doing this. And so I think Trump is a uniquely dangerous client.
He's a crime super spreader.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
You get near him, you get the crime on you.
Yeah.
It's. I thought that in the Mar-a-Lago investigation, so the government, the DOJ basically said they do not want to unseal the affidavit, which is basically the evidence that led the judge to issue the search warrant to the FBI, which Trump and the press both asked for them to unseal the affidavit. And the reason is they said disclosure of the government's affidavit at this stage would also likely chill future cooperation by witnesses whose assistance may be sought as this investigation progresses. And it could also harm, quote, other high-profile investigations as well. Thought that was pretty interesting because there was this thought at the beginning after the search was conducted, okay, maybe DOJ is just interested in getting, and DOD and the federal government in general, just interested in getting all of their classified information back. And once they have it back, leave Trump alone, and that's that. It seems that either, if they're continuing the investigation, either there's a potential they may bring charges, or there's more, they believe there's more classified information they still don't have back, or, like they just said, hinted there are other investigations somehow connected to the Mar-a-Lago investigation that are all wrapped up together that they don't want to tip their hand on. What did you think?
It's very intriguing, John, and I'm excited to see what happens. I'll tell you that. Who knows, right? It is like, I think it at least says that Trump's legal jeopardy did not end at the raid. That he is like, obviously he's got legal jeopardy in multiple jurisdictions for multiple crimes in multiple places. But in this specific crime that is currently overshadowing Joe Biden's tremendous record of success, he is not out of the woods yet. I think that is interesting and notable and, problematic for Trump.
There's reports that he wants to release the surveillance tape, the surveillance footage of the FBI conducting the search at Mar-a-Lago. Apparently, the FBI, when they started conducting the search, Trump and his family was watching from New York. They were watching the surveillance footage, and the FBI told them to shut it off, and they said no, they decided not to shut it off, and they just watched the search anyway. And now Trump wants to release that footage. Why do you think he wants to release that footage?
I can't imagine there's anything interesting there, but some of the reporting around this has said that the reason that Trump allies want to do this is they think it will further excite and inflame the Trump base, because you would see, FBI agents, whatever terrible Nazi or jackbooted thug analogy these right-wing lunatics are using, to, roaming around his beach house. I don't know why that would be interesting, but I think they think it's just like more content that makes it seem like ultimately what Trump wants to be is a martyr. He wants to be a victim. He wants grievance. Yeah. And this would be a piece of evidence that would dominate right-wing media. It would rally people to his defense. Some of the people who came out there right away, who have since backed away, as it turns out that every single thing he said from the day of the raid was a lie, will come back out, because this will be a moment to express support for Trump. So and it's not going to help his legal case. I don't think it's necessarily going to help his larger political case, but I think it will likely mean more $1 million days in online donations for his scam pack that he uses to pay for his legal defense.
I don't think it's going to help his political case with the general electorate by any means, but clearly he's just running a Republican primary here, and he wants to, like you said, he wants to be the victim, because if he's the victim, then Republicans will feel forced to rally around him. I've thought that from the beginning that Trump is going to run and he's going to be the nominee again. Then there was a period where I briefly flirted with the idea that maybe Ron DeSantis could take this guy down. And I was waiting for the moment that Trump announced for president and to see how Ron DeSantis would react to that. But a similar moment came where the FBI searches Mar-a-Lago, and Ron DeSantis is just there's no daylight between him and Trump. He just goes right out. I thought he had a chance to separate himself just a little bit on this. And no one did. No one in the Republican Party, except for the usuals that we're about to talk about, separated themselves from Trump, no matter how bad the facts get for him around this, which leads me now to think like, I don't know. I don't think anyone can take this guy down. I don't think any of them are willing to do it.
That may be. That absolutely may be. Ron DeSantis has a complicated political calculus right now, which is, although he is favored, he is up for re-election in a few months. And were he to separate himself from Donald Trump on an FBI raid taking place in Ron DeSantis' state, and Donald Trump were to actively turn against him, then I think that he's still favored. But that, like, I understand why he did not do that. The question will be, what happens the minute after the votes are counted? What happens the minute after the votes are counted if he wins re-election? How does he navigate Trump then?
Yeah.
But so he's still obviously a huge favorite to win the nomination were he to run again. But I don't know that what happened this past week tells us a ton about at least how Ron DeSantis would run against him.
Well, one Republican who separated himself from Trump this week is our boy Mike Pence of Hang Mike Pence fame. Didn't put that in the outline. It made me laugh. Pence is back in the news gave a speech, told Republicans to stop attacking the FBI, and also said that he would consider an invitation to testify before the January 6th committee when asked by a reporter what he would do if they reached out. What do you think's going on there?
The Occam's razor explanation for all things involving Mike Pence is that he's one of the dumbest people in American public life. Like there's not a lot of strategy happening there. I mean, let's just presume for a second that he is less dumb than everyone knows he to be. His chances of winning, were Trump to run, his chances of winning a nomination against Trump are minuscule. They are zero if he doesn't do something to differentiate himself from Trump. Right? He has to make a case against Trump. He would still lose most likely, but it's his only shot. And so I think the acceptance of Mike Pence as something other than a national joke comes from the fact that Trump tried to murder him and failed. And so testifying in January, and you've seen the Wall Street Journal editorial board and some Republican donor world and sort of MAGA adjacent establishment folks have come around on Mike Pence in part because of what happened on January 6th and that he stood strong that day and with the heroic task of not committing treason that was doomed to fail. So I think that he's probably sort of riding that a little bit, he's definitely not testifying in a live hearing. He's not about to be Cassidy Hutchinson or Liz. Yeah, he and Liz Cheney are going to team up together in the next January 6th hearing. I mean, it's such a small constituency, as we're about to talk about with Cheney, for Republicans who Pence's case is basically, I'm everything you loved about the Trump administration without all the character flaws of Donald Trump. Or the charisma.
Yes. Exactly. But that's my point, right? It's no. People aren't supporting Trump. The MAGA base doesn't love the accomplishments of the fucking Trump administration. They're not that they're singing the praises about the Abraham Accords.
Tommy doesn't even know you said that, but somewhere his head just exploded.
I know. That's not why they're there. They're there for the character flaws. They're there because he's an asshole and he's stirring up grievance and anger and resentment. That's what they love. It's crazy. Pence might have some new competition, though, in the race to be the anti-Trump Republican in 2024. Our queen, Liz Cheney, said on Wednesday that she's thinking about running for president. This is after Cheney lost her Wyoming primary against Republican lawyer Harriet Hageman. Hageman?
Doesn't matter. It honestly doesn't matter.
On Tuesday by 66 to 29%. That's a lot. That's a big loss. But the next day, Cheney hinted that she's not done with politics during an interview with Savannah Guthrie on the Today Show. Let's listen.
I will be doing whatever it takes to keep Donald Trump out of the Oval Office.
Well, I know you didn't say yes or no, and that's fine if you're thinking about it, but are you thinking about it? Are you thinking about running for president?
That's a decision that I'm going to make in the coming months, Savannah. I'm not going to make any announcements here this morning, but it is something that I'm thinking about, and I'll make a decision in the coming months.
Dan, are you heading to Cheyenne to run this thing, or what?
I presume we're all going together, right? We're getting the gang back together again.
Maybe, Jackson Hole's nice. Set up camp there.
That's exactly what a bunch of resistance liberals would do.
I know,
where they would put the Cheney headquarters.
The little blue dot in Wyoming.
We need to be. Where can we get a chai latte? We need to be within 1 mile of a chai latte.
Assuming that Liz Cheney is both smart, which I think she is, and genuinely wants to stop Trump from becoming president again, which I think she does. How would this work? Is this a good idea? What could she be thinking here?
It wouldn't work, John. No. I mean, look, I think this whole thing is a very fascinating intellectual exercise, which is probably where it tops out in terms of significance. But like, here are the various scenarios where this happens. One is Trump runs, DeSantis runs, a bunch of Republicans run, and she joins that field. Is there in a large multi-candidate field, are there enough hardcore conservative Bush-Cheney anti-Trump Republicans
Absolutely
to
not.
give something? No, there's absolutely not. I mean, she got 29% in a state where her family are political royalty. So it's going to be very different in Iowa or South Carolina or somewhere like that. The Cheneys have been political royalty in that state for half a century. Another world is Trump doesn't run. Then there's no lane for her, right? Her lane is anti-Trump, end of January, like stop being big lies, like there's no reason to run. And the next one is everyone else takes a pass. Your theory on Ron DeSantis bears out, and it's just Trump and Cheney, right? And maybe there's some other like third tier or fourth tier yahoos, but those are the two people. In that case, I don't think there would be a single RNC debate. I think the RNC would not hold the debate if the only two significant candidates were Trump and Cheney.
Or I heard that they're flirting with requiring every candidate who participates in the debate to sign a loyalty pledge that they will ultimately support the nominee, in which case they think that Liz Cheney would not sign that pledge because she will not ultimately support Trump.
Yeah, and I think that the party would probably pass a resolution saying she was not a Republican.
they're not going to fuck around with this. They're just going to go right to no Liz Cheney allowed.
The decision to hold primaries are in most cases decided by the party. So I think there's a legitimate chance South Carolina would cancel its primary if it was Cheney, Trump. Now, what is interesting here and what I think is savvy about it is Cheney's going to be in Congress for another 4 months. This hearing has given her this huge platform. As long as she is talking about running for president, she is going to have a platform once she's out of Congress, once the January 6th hearing committee is over, or at least her participation is over, to make a large public case about Trump. Like pretending to run for president or contemplating running for president will give her media access to the media, give her a place to make that case. And if she wants to make the case to Republicans, independents, Biden Republicans, et cetera, that returning to Donald Trump is deeply dangerous, she will have the ability to do that. I think this is a decision to have a platform, not to be president.
What about the possibility of a third party run? And talk about that one.
That would be one way. Third party runs are always very hard. She'd have to join probably an existing party that has ballot access, like the Libertarian Party.
Yeah, so she runs on the Libertarian ticket. Or she gets on the ballots because fucking No Labels has raised a bunch of money for ballot access.
Mansion Cheney?
Cheney
Mansion? Will she be on the Forward Party ticket?
Oh my God.
I think there'd be real risk there. And we don't know enough about the political environment. It all depends on if Biden's running, what his approval rating is, who the Democrat is. But there's real risk that an anti-Trump conservative could suck just enough voters in these battleground states that are more Republican than the national average.
Yeah.
No, she would drop out in that scenario. Like, this is not a Howard Schultz sort of situation.
This is the danger of her on the ballot everywhere as a third party candidate, is that she, like, who is a Liz Cheney voter? It's either, like you said, a conservative Republican, probably college educated from the Bush-Cheney era, who just was sick of Trump. Those people are few and far between. A lot of them have already just crossed over to vote for Joe Biden in the last election, if not in 2016 and 2020. So the number of them that are still Republican are few. Or, again, it's people who now have been voting Democrat who, for the last several elections, who were like, well, I'm kind of sick of Democrats and I don't like Trump, but Liz Cheney. And that would pull votes away from Biden. I'd be particularly worried in states with, a lot more college-educated voters that are turning bluer, like an Arizona, like a Georgia. I think Liz Cheney on the ticket as a third party in those states could really spoil the election for the Democrats. The question is, are there red states where she just gets on the ballot in some red states that a Democrat would never win anyway, and she's on the ballot, so she spoils, so she makes sure that Trump can't win that state, or she just takes enough votes away from Trump into like a redder state to spoil the election for him, and then helps the Democrat. There's like some math there that could work in a redder state.
It's hard because I can probably only identify 2 states off the top of my head
Utah,
where that is possible. Well, I take that 3. That's a good one. Utah is one interesting one just because it's a very unique electorate, but it would probably be North Carolina and Texas. Because Democrats tend to win the battleground states that we won in 2020 and we need to win in 2024 were all incredibly close. The states we lost by pretty large margins. So you would have to really suck up a huge swath of voters. I mean, the math in the South is really interesting where you have a very, very large black population that makes up a huge percentage of Democrats. But you would have to you have to get to like Ross Perot like numbers to go back to 1992 to really to drive someone's win number into the low 40s, which is what Ross Perot did which is created the math environment where Bill Clinton could become president with a pretty overwhelming electoral college margin without coming anywhere near getting 50% of the vote nationally.
Yeah. No, I think it's pretty tough. Do you think Liz Cheney's primary loss says anything about the Republican Party that we didn't already know? I don't.
No. I looked at that question on the outline for a long time, and I was very curious if you had any thoughts on it. But I think the one thing if you look at all of the primaries that have happened today, because we're getting kind of to the end here, is that you can win a Republican primary if Trump is against you, but you cannot win a Republican primary if you are against Trump.
Yeah.
And that is a relatively important. That's why Brian Kemp won and Liz Cheney lost.
And she lost by a lot. And I just think the constituency out there in the Republican Party for candidates who want to run specifically against Trump, like you said, it's too small. It's too small but like you said, in a state where the Cheneys are political royalty. All right. When we come back, filmmaker Alex Holder talks about his new documentary on the final days of Trump's presidency. The presenting sponsor of today's episode is Simply Safe Home Security. Old days of home security systems, the ones that looked like hardwired monstrosities, complete with sirens and sensors that the family pet could set off, are over. Wow. What a sentence. Okay. Thanks to Simply Safe's innovative and award-winning technology, your home and family can be protected by the security system of the future. The future. With 24/7 professional monitoring, Simply Safe's agents call you the moment a threat is detected and dispatch police or first responders in an emergency. Even if you're not home or can't be reached, Simply Safe's monitoring agents are highly trained to help keep you calm and safe during stressful situations, staying on the line with you until help arrives. Simply Safe's affordable plans start at less than $1 a day with no long-term contract or hidden fees because feeling safe at home shouldn't break the bank. Love it. You've had a great experience. I've heard.
I have had a great experience, and I used to have one of those systems where things would set up. There was I had a different brand, and it had like a glass break sensor, and you'd just be sitting in, you'd be minding your own business, dreaming about tacos and stress dreams about a class you didn't know you were in, and then boom, it would go off because it wasn't good. But Simply Safe so much better. I set it up myself with my own hands, and it worked really well, and I really recommend it. I think everybody should go to Simply Safe.
Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplysafe.com/crooked. Go today and claim a free indoor security camera plus 20% off with interactive monitoring. Go to simplysafe.com/crooked. Pod Save America is brought to you by Cariuma. Look, you already know we're freaks for Cariuma shoes. They look cool. They're comfortable. They're available in both bold prints and neutral colors that I love wearing all the time.
John.
We're excited to announce. This is an announcement.
There's an announcement.
There's a lot of talk right there, but now stop whatever you're listening. It's probably been going in. It's like just love it doing his blah blah kind of thing.
Yeah, it's love it doing his blah blah.
There's a real announcement here.
Throwing a little beep, 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 beep. Yep, throw it in right there.
What was that? Crooked and Cariuma have collaborated to launch our own co-branded Aka low tops in 2 designs that we think you'll really love.
Crooked shoes, people.
Crooked and Cariuma shoes together. These sneakers are everything you love about both Crooked and Cariuma. They're made ethically and sustainably from organic cotton canvas, natural rubber, cork, and recycled plastics. And every pair you buy plants 2 trees in the Brazilian rainforest through Cariuma's in-house ecological restoration program. They're just as good on the outside with 2 ways to wear your progressive values. One shoe is covered with an I voted sticker print that our design team knocked out of the park.
It knocked it out of the park.
And the other is a classic white sneaker with the words "No Steps Back." Sneakers that I'm literally wearing right now.
I don't want you all to know something. It doesn't seem like it would be hard to come up with a pithy slogan that you could put on a shoe that would carry a message we like, but that wouldn't be cringe. And I just want, a lot of people went through a lot of different options. No
I'm
Steps
wearing
Back.
them. I'm wearing them
When we
right
heard
now.
No Steps Back, we're like, I can't believe we nailed it.
Nailed it.
We nailed it.
It's a timely political rallying cry.
Outside of the park.
It's a subtle shoe pun.
Not a ground
It's
rule
a
double.
subtle. It's a
What
subtle
more do you
shoe
want?
pun.
You want
is
a
the key
timeless
thing.
political rallying cry plus a subtle shoe
A
pun.
timeless political rallying cry, as we say.
As always, a portion of the proceeds from these shoes and any item you buy from Crooked Store goes to Vote Riders, the leading organization focused on voter ID. They inform citizens of their state's voter ID requirements and help them secure the documents they may need to vote. And you can support them just by picking up some new Crooked kicks.
And it's a subtle shoe pun.
You can check out both designs and claim your pair at crooked.com/kicks. Pod Save America is brought to you by Real Paper. Trees are pretty great, aren't they? They provide shade, make oxygen, prevent erosion, suck up all that carbon, provide homes for animals. Is there anything they can't do?
Well, can't they? Yeah, I don't think so.
I mean, yeah, we could list a whole bunch of things, but then the ad would be way too long. To turn something as awesome as a tree, and more accurately a forest of trees, into toilet paper just feels wrong.
Yeah.
These trees spent decades growing only to get cut down and flushed down the toilet. I mean, even the tree from the Giving Tree got to give out a few apples before they turned her branches into a house. You go back to that book, you have a child, not great, The Giving Tree. Very sad.
Okay.
Very sad.
You know what else kids shouldn't be exposed to? The Little Mermaid. Ugh.
Okay, yeah. We're
Give
starting
up
a
your
list.
voice and change yourself.
That's true. Yeah, that is a whole... Wow. Anyway, Real Paper. I love Real Paper because it's a sustainable toilet paper that uses I knew we were talking about something. Sustainable toilet paper that uses 100% bamboo. The great thing about bamboo is that it's a fast-growing grass. Some species of bamboo can grow up to 3 feet per day, and because it's a grass, they're able to harvest the same stock over and over without disrupting the plant or soil. And on top of the ecological benefit of using bamboo, Real Paper's packaging is plastic-free and compostable.
The other day, someone sent me a link to a TikTok about a reusable cloth toilet paper. So don't let that happen. We got to get ahead of this problem so we don't get there.
That was
Get real
gross,
paper.
Tommy. That was gross.
Real
Anyway,
paper.
so here's the thing. It's a subscription, which is great because no one wants to be lugging around big things of toilet paper in the grocery store and then bringing it out to your car. So you get it dropped off. It feels good on your ass, and it's not killing trees.
If I ever take a house and I look to my right and there's cloth toilet paper, I will come to only one conclusion. The only way out is to burn your house to the ground because I got to get out.
Anyway, Real Paper is available in easy, hassle-free subscriptions or for one-time purchases on their website. All orders are conveniently delivered to your door with free shipping and 100% recyclable plastic-free packaging. If you head to realpaper.com/crooked and sign up for a subscription using our code crooked at checkout, you'll automatically get 30% off your first order and free shipping. That's REELPAPER.com/crooked or enter promo code crooked to get 30% off your first order plus free shipping. So let's stop flushing our forests and try Real's tree-free paper. Real is paper for the planet. Welcome back. We're joined today in studio by Alex Holder, a filmmaker whose new documentary about Trump's final days in office, Unprecedented, was subpoenaed by the January 6th committee because of how much access to the Trump family he had. Alex, welcome to the pod.
So nice to be here.
It's nice to have you. So Trump, Ivanka, Don Jr., Eric, Jared, all sat down for multiple interviews with you between sort of like the final months of the campaign and a couple months after Trump left office. And they did so knowing that they had no control over the project at all. How did you get them to agree to that?
So I think when we first started, they were pretty convinced they were going to win the election. And some of them still think that they won.
Yeah, famously so.
Exactly. But this was going to be a repeat of the 2016 election all over again. The pollsters were all wrong. And Don Jr.'s favorite line was during the campaign was "Let's make liberals cry again," which I always thought was pretty cruel and not that funny.
No,
but
a lot of it. Watching the documentary, a lot of his jokes are just terrible.
Yeah, really bad, really bad. And he I think he laughs a lot at his own jokes.
Yeah.
And then people then laugh because he's laughing. I think because he's just a bit of a moron. But I mean, yeah. So they thought that they were going to win. And also, I was somebody that wasn't part of the mainstream media, I guess, right? Like, I'm a British guy, foreign, didn't really have any political skin in the game. So why not have this sort of random British dude film us win the election? And I think the third was actually the British accent. I mean, Trump is obsessed with the Queen.
That's right.
he's absolutely obsessed. I mean, almost on every occasion I met him, he would always bring the Queen up. And I wonder whether or not there's, he feels like the Trump family are like a quasi,
I'm sure
like royal dynastic, family perhaps. But
I'm sure also the simplicity of his brain is just like guy with British accent, bring up Queen.
Exactly.
That's it.
Right?
That's all he's got.
Yeah. I mean, with Eric, actually, it was guy with British accent. Have you been to the golf course in Scotland? So,
Always got business on his mind. So you first sat down with Trump in December 2020, after he lost. What was his state of mind at that point? And do you think he actually believed he won, or did he seem like he was full of shit?
I mean, he's certainly full of shit, but he also
That we know.
and he also believes that he won. I mean, and which I think is actually really important because, there's to be so delusional and still be the president of the United States of America, the incumbent, the commander in chief. I mean, the guy with the fucking nuclear football was literally standing behind me in the diplomatic reception room, whilst he is literally reading out of how to be a totalitarian dictator. We need to find brave judges that agree with my position, right? So he convinced himself of the lie. But I mean, just that interview in its own right was extraordinary. I mean, I didn't think it was going to happen. I mean, this is a month after the election. He wasn't giving interviews to anybody. And we're outside the White House, the Secret Service doing all the checks and everything. We go inside. And I still didn't think he was going to come. And then the moment I knew he was on his way was when the Secret Service all started moving around. And then I heard them say, mogul on the move. And at that point, it was like, oh, really? This is actually happening. And he sits down and, it was just an extraordinary experience in the sense of, this is the White House. He's the incumbent president of the United States of America. And there's that very famous George Washington painting looking down at him. And he is literally undermining democracy. And it was just, I said this on the Seth Meyers show, after the interview, I sort of held onto a wall because I was so taken aback by what had actually happened. Because there's a big difference between him doing his, the rhetoric at a campaign rally to actually sitting in the White House and saying the bullshit that he was saying.
Well, I was going to ask because, there's like a very famous anonymous quote that was given to the Washington Post in the weeks after the election where some senior Republican official said, like, just let him have his fun. What do you think he's not going to leave? I mean, he's going to leave eventually. It's fine. Just let him burn himself out, whatever. And of course, famously, that almost didn't happen. At what point while you were making this documentary did you start thinking to yourself, oh shit, this could go really badly and maybe he's not going to try, maybe he's going to try not to leave and things could go south pretty fast?
Honestly, after that interview, I mean, that interview really was quite extraordinary because he just wouldn't stop talking about how the election was won by him. And he wasn't just saying why he thought he won it. He was actually coming up with remedies to show how it was stolen from him. So he was talking about how the Georgia officials need to reopen the votes to compare the signatures. And he was saying that the Secretary of State and the governor of Georgia were stupid people because they weren't agreeing with his position. And actually we need to open this up and move it to the to the state legislature because they agree with him. And he was saying, we need to find the right judges, etc. So there was no way that this wasn't going to get more and more serious as time moved on. That's what I was thinking. So yeah.
You interviewed him for a second time at Mar-a-Lago a few months after he left office. What was he like then?
So it was a very different personality. He was much more depressed. He was angry and depressed. When I met him in the White House, he was sort of angry but quite assertive. Whereas in Mar-a-Lago, he was angry and depressed. And the reason he was depressed, I found out one of his aides told me before he came in, that he was in a really bad mood because he was going through withdrawal from not being able to use Twitter.
Like actual withdrawal.
Literally, that was the words that she used, that he was going through a withdrawal. So, and he had put on weight, and I mean, he's a big guy anyway, but he had really sort of put on weight, and he was very down. And so it was so funny. He walks into Mar-a-Lago, and there's this hideous painting of him from about 30 years ago, like an oil painting of him. And I wanted to include that in the shot, but I wasn't sure whether or not they would be embarrassed of us including that in the shot. But we did it anyway. And they were so happy that we included it in the shot. Anyway, he walks in and I'm like, hello, Mr. President. And he completely ignores me and he starts talking about like, isn't this the most beautiful floor you've ever seen? I mean, Mar-a-Lago is stunning, but the floor, I mean, it was just...
He just needs constant positive feedback about anything.
Exactly.
Just
he sits down...
empty hole.
And then we're doing, literally, I mean, we're doing the small talk. And I said last time we spoke was at the White House. And he's like, oh, but this is much more beautiful than the White House. You know, I mean...
And he believes that.
Absolutely.
Did Mar-a-Lago seem like a safe place to keep nuclear secrets?
I mean, it's a members club that you play golf. I mean, it's probably the worst place you would ever keep secrets.
Yeah, what was the security like there?
I mean, obviously there's Secret Service security, but it's much more, much less than when he's at the White House.
And that's just around him, really.
Exactly. I mean, I was able to walk around the place totally. We were sort of left to our own devices. So, I mean, it was not at all secure. And at one point in the interview, we were interrupted because the members of the public that are at this club were making a noise, and Trump was like, tell them to shut up. I mean, it is just, but it's so typical Trump to believe that these documents belong to him, right? I mean, he's just...
I was going to say, do you have a theory, having spent so much time with him, do you have a theory as to why he would take classified info with him to Mar-a-Lago, and not just take it with him like, oh, by accident, but then be asked for it back by the government, by federal agents, and refuse to give it all back?
Yeah, I mean, it's because his name's on it and he thinks it's his. I mean, he's just as simple as that. The thing with Trump is that he really is just a very simple, quite strange, dumb guy. I mean, with all due respect. I mean,
Occam's razor on this kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he...
And a good sense of how to entertain people, and a good sense of television, and a good sense of how to rile people up. But I think beyond that, there's not a lot.
Oh, there's no substance at all. I mean, there's no substance even when he's doing the things that he's quite good at, I would say. As in, like, he's very basic. But, I mean, he kept talking about Kim Jong-un all the way through all these interviews. And those are the letters that he had between the two of them. That in his mind, they are his letters. And so, obviously, they should be in his house.
You testified before the January 6th committee. You did a deposition. They had subpoenaed some footage. What was the focus of the committee's questions?
I think they were obviously surprised about the fact that we had this access and no one knew about it. I mean, the Trumps knew about it and the people around them, and they claim they didn't know about it, which was obviously ridiculous because we were always there and very present. But I think they were surprised by the access. I think they were interested in the footage that we captured on January 6th, which wasn't with the family. We were just, we were in DC and that was a horrific day, and we captured this moment of one of Trump's own supporters essentially being crushed to death on the steps of the Capitol. I mean, he's totally obviously responsible for that in every single way. And so I think they were very interested in that footage and also just what people were doing at various times as well, and the lead up to it, and the people around them as well. So they were interested in a lot of sort of the behind the scenes of what was going on whilst we were interviewing the president and others.
Was there footage that they were looking for that didn't make it into the final documentary? Because I watched the documentary last night, and by the way, very compelling, well done. There was, though I kept looking for something that was going to be like a revelation in terms of what the January 6th Commission is investigating, and I didn't, maybe I'm very in the weeds on everything, but I didn't notice anything, and I was wondering if there was a bunch of footage that didn't make it in that the committee found interesting.
So there is a lot of footage that didn't make it in.
I imagine, yeah.
so I'll leave it at that. I mean, I think, look, they have their own sort of narrative and sort of agenda that they want to sort of look at, and they have everything, and they'll probably pick the pieces that they think they need or what they're interested in.
Did you get a sense of lines of inquiry from the committee that that surprised you, or where they were heading, or areas they were looking for that we all haven't seen in prime time over the last several months?
No. I think it was all. I mean, they were very straightforward, and I think that it was very. They were very sort of direct with their questions and very engaged, and it was very clear how important this was. I mean, for me at least, when I go in there and sitting down, and I'm now talking to probably the most consequential political investigations into Watergate, and I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? I mean, so it was. They definitely showed the importance of what they were doing and how this is. this isn't a circus, right? Like this is actually really. I mean, the guy, fractured the foundations of democracy in America, and this is an important investigation to prevent that from ever happening again and to find out how. So I think that was really the key, and that's what they're into finding out.
You mentioned Georgia. You're also expected to testify in the case that the Fulton County DA is bringing the criminal investigation.
I keep getting these subpoenas the whole time. I was like collecting
Not something you would expected when you started a documentary. Although I guess if you're doing a documentary about the Trump family, maybe you do.
Exactly, I was probably
maybe
naive,
do expect
right?
some subpoenas. What do you think? What parts of your footage do you think will be important to the grand jury in the Georgia investigation? I know there was a small part in the documentary that mentioned that you replayed the call between Raffensperger and Trump, but are there other parts of the footage?
Yeah, so in the first interview with Trump, he talks about Georgia a lot, and some of it's in the doc and some of it isn't in the doc, but there's quite a bit where he is referring to Georgia and try. And I think what's interesting is that the phone call actually took place almost exactly a month after that interview. So you can sort of see, this wasn't just like a spur of the moment thing. I mean, he was really convinced that they needed to find these 11,000 votes a month earlier.
So he'd been plotting that for a while.
It seems like that's the case. Yeah.
That's okay. I think you probably. It seems from the documentary that you set out to do a documentary about the Trump family dynamics with the children. We've all come to know Trump's children as like caricatures. The caricatures that we all have of the Trump children, do they hold up in real life?
Absolutely. I mean, I think Eric just sort of wants this is obviously my take on all this, right? But like Eric just wants this all to stop. I think he just wants to.
My take on your how you portrayed Eric is like. You tried to give him a story. He doesn't have much of a story.
Literally. Yeah.
Which is what everyone thinks. He's always just like, he's sort of interested in business and now he's in politics and he's just Eric. There's nothing else.
And my dad's my best friend, I mean, and then you've got Don Jr., who just, I found him so hilarious. I mean, dangerous, but also very hilarious. I mean, his political awakening is having gone to, back then, Czechoslovakia to be with his grandparents. And he was complaining about how he couldn't wear his American flag jean jacket, and he was so scared that could happen in America. So that's why he is now this staunch right-wing Republican, to prevent the idea of communist. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. When they say these things, you have to try and not laugh. And then obviously when he talks about how the state of journalism is so bad that he wrote a book that he was very proud of. So
I found the Don Jr. stuff very interesting, somewhat frightening, because I do think he's sort of the biggest political threat in the family in the future.
Yeah.
And I hadn't realized the whole backstory there until I watched the doc, that, Ivanka's always been the favorite child. Trump's always proud of her because she's polished and successful in everything he wants the Trump brand to be. And he was always a little bit embarrassed by Don Jr. because Don Jr. was what we now think of as Trumpier. He was closer to the base. He loved guns, loved shooting, was more MAGA than any of the other children. And so Don Jr. then uses that during the campaign to sort of outmaneuver Ivanka as to try to be the new favorite kid. And is arguably closer to the MAGA base than his father or any of the children.
Absolutely. I mean, it's hilarious how at the end of the day, all they want is their father's attention, right?
Which is clear, yeah.
And America suffered because of that, right? I mean, that's basically what it was, right? It was a family-run business where the three eldest children were all trying to outmaneuver each other, and and they're running the country for all intents and purposes. I mean, it's extraordinary. And I don't think, at best, they just didn't understand what the fuck they were doing. I mean, at worst, they did, and we'll find out. But,
right.
It's just incompetence and not understanding how dangerous the rhetoric is when you have such a large platform and, including the children, right? They just didn't understand what they were doing, or if they did understand what they were doing, they were obviously very bad people.
Yeah. We all have a particular loathing for Jared Kushner here at Crooked. He's got a new book out, fantastic review in the New York Times. If everyone hasn't read it yet, what was your take on Jared?
I mean, Jared it was actually so interesting because he came across as somebody who genuinely believed that he had a right to be in the position that he was in. And I just found that so fascinating. I mean, of all the things that, to come across as, right? To come across as somebody who has the audacity to think that he deserved to be in that position that he was in. And I mean, the fact, like, the only reason he's there is because his wife's dad won the election, right? I mean,
Right.
that's
no
literally...
no other planet would you hire Jared Kushner for something.
Right. So like, I mean...
that you wanted to succeed in.
Yeah. So, that for me was pretty extraordinary. So, yeah, I mean, other than that, he's very... I mean, I always say he's really... I mean, he's a nice dude. I mean, like, he shook my hand and said thanks, but like, he was just sort of impressively unimpressive.
Yeah, no. A set of dimples without a demographic was the
Yes,
description
yeah.
in the New York Times that really got me. I cannot imagine a scenario where Donald Trump doesn't run again, even if he is indicted. I mean, I don't think that might make him more likely to run again. Can you imagine a scenario where he doesn't run again?
No, so I think he's definitely going to announce that he's going to run. I just don't think he will end up running.
You don't?
No, I mean, there's a few reasons. Like, one is that the guy lives on a diet of basically Diet Coke and burgers, and he's sort of not the healthiest guy in the world. And two is that Trump doesn't normally, or ever really in his life, do the same thing again when he fails. He pivots to something else. So when businesses fail, casinos, etc., he'll move to something else. So I think here it's a similar situation. Also, the first time round, he didn't think he was going to win, right? And it was all part of his whole little game of like just getting media attention, etc. But he won. The idea of being able to maintain that the election was stolen a second time, I don't think even he thinks is potentially...
I don't know. I think if he believes the lie, and he's made himself believe the lie, that he doesn't think he failed in 2020, and so then this is revenge.
Sure, but at the same time, I think that he believes the lie that they could do it again, right? And also, look, Trump doesn't understand why people don't like him unless he doesn't like them first, right? So in his mind, and that's the same with everything. So he doesn't understand why people don't agree with him with respect to the election. So I think he would potentially be nervous that the same thing could happen again. I mean, it's totally ludicrous. Look, the guy, it's just extraordinary. And the guy, I think we all, in some ways, assume that he is a rational player, and we sort of then sort of rank him to that, right? Like we sort of assume that we can actually
sort of ascribe strategy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like he's on a different. He's in a different dimension. I mean, he does not exist in this reality whatsoever.
My last question on this is just, you spent so much time not only with Trump and the family, but at events with all of these Trump fans, voters. Did you come away with a better understanding of the appeal of Donald Trump to the, however many million Americans voted for him at the end?
Sure. I mean, at the end of the day, he's the guy that stands up on the stage and says, "I'm going to give you everything you want." I mean, it's the simplest way of getting people. I mean, he's the populist, right? He's the demagogue. So you have X problem, I'm going to fix it for you, and the fact that it's not possible to fix it, or he doesn't understand all the issues, is irrelevant, right? Like, I have a problem, I'm your guy to fix it. And people, bought into that. And he's good. I mean, when he speaks, it's totally incoherent, right? But actually, what he's doing is he's moving from, one aspect to another aspect based on the reactions of the crowd. It's very interesting to see. So, if he's talking about, say, in Kansas, and he'll be doing a rally there, and he'll start mentioning, how he moved the Israeli embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and there isn't much of a reaction. So immediately, move from that to like, we built the biggest wall ever, right? Like, there's no connection whatsoever. But he's very good at knowing what the crowd want, and he sort of feeds the crowd the rhetoric that they applaud, and that's his cocaine essentially.
Yeah, and shamelessness, I guess, is a powerful weapon in politics.
I mean,
as well.
he was so brilliant at using the apparatus of the presidency. I mean, there were moments actually, and it's interesting how it wasn't picked up. Like, he was actually like, Kim Jong-un in the sense of, when they all run, after him when he's in, when Kim Jong-un in the car, they all run after him. There was this rally we were at, and the two presidential cars, the Beasts, right?
Yep.
So you've got these two cars that were basically, so the Air Force One lands, and the cars basically were like moving really slowly whilst he's walking to the stage on either side. And I mean, it was just, and then all the Secret Service around him and everything. And then the best is that he would time the takeoff of Air Force One to the crescendo of Nessun Dorma. I shit you not.
What?
Literally, at the end of rallies, he would not allow Air Force One to take off until it reached the crescendo of Nessun Dorma. So basically, you've got that the end of the song, and then suddenly Air Force One like zooms up into the sky.
He's such a...
I mean, it's extraordinary.
He's
right?
a TV guy.
He's a TV guy.
He's a TV guy. Alex Holder, thank you so much. The documentary is unprecedented. Check it out. It's on Discovery Plus, I believe.
Yep.
Thanks for stopping by Pod Save America. This was fun.
This is really fun. Thanks so much.
Pod Save America is brought to you by Outerknown. Outerknown is offering men's and women's clothing where style meets sustainability. Their mission is to provide great clothes that don't harm the environment. Sustainability is not something they take lightly. It's literally why the company exists. Outerknown only works with factories that pay fair living wages and provide safe working conditions. 95% of products are made from organic or recycled materials. Outerknown clothes are high quality, sustainable, comfortable, fit great, timeless style made to last for multiple years. Tommy, you've gotten some of these. Why don't you talk about them?
I love my Outerknown sweaters. They look good. They feel good. They're comfortable. I don't know. They're great. They're great.
Go to outerknown.com today and enter the code CROOKED at checkout, and you'll get 25% off your full price order. That's outerknown.com, outerknown.com. And remember to use the code CROOKED at checkout for 25% off. Check them out today, outerknown.com, and don't forget promo code CROOKED for 25% off. Pod Save America is brought to you by Beam Organics. Did you know that poor sleep can cause weight gain, mood issues, poor mental health, and lower productivity? Sure do.
It did.
And that sleeping less than 6 to 7 hours per night is linked to reduced white blood cell count. White blood cells protect our body against illness and diseases, fighting viruses, bacteria, and more. Not many people realize this, but having a consistent nighttime routine is so important. A better tomorrow starts tonight. Yeah, not sleeping is terrible. It makes you feel shitty all day, makes you not concentrate. It's not great.
It's terrible. Just terrible.
We have a solution for you, though, guys.
It's a Beam Dream.
Yep. It's the world's most innovative functional wellness brand with unique products for everything from sleep to recovery. And today, listeners can get Beam's biggest discount available for their sleep product, Dream Powder, their best-selling healthy hot cocoa. It contains natural sleep-promoting premium ingredients, triple lab-tested, no THC, and you wake up refreshed. 98% of people surveyed fall asleep faster when taking Beam Dream, and 99% of people experience better sleep quality. Just mix Beam Dream into hot water or milk, stir, and enjoy before bedtime. This is great. You drink some hot chocolate before you fall asleep. Now you fall asleep.
Solid.
What else could you want?
It's easy.
What else
Good
could you
plan.
want? Find out why Forbes and New York Times are all talking about Beam and why it's trusted by the world's top athletes like Danica Patrick and Baker Mayfield. Don't love it? Get your money back guaranteed. For a limited time, get up to 35% off when you go to shopbeam.com/crooked and use code CROOKED at checkout. That's Beam's biggest discount available at shopbeam.com/crooked and use code CROOKED for up to 35% off. All right. Before we go, we have to talk about the most important and explosive story of the week. A video of Dr. Oz shopping in the produce aisle of Wegmans grocery store that was created and released by his own campaign. Let's take a listen.
Thought I'd do some grocery shopping. I'm at Wegner's, and my wife wants some vegetables for crudité, right? So here's a broccoli. That's $2. Not a ton of broccoli there. There's some asparagus. That's $4. Yep. And carrots. That's $4 more. That's $10 of vegetables there. And then we need some guacamole. That's $4 more. And she loves salsa. Yeah, there's salsa there. $6. Must be a shortage of salsa. Guys, that's $20 for crudité, and this doesn't include the tequila. I mean, that's outrageous. And we got Joe Biden to thank for this.
All right. Elijah, are you there? We have to tell the story of how this became a story.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Elijah. So what everyone has to know before we dive into this is this video was not new this week. This video was first released April 4th, 2022. It is now August, I am told. I forget which month it is. Elijah, how did this come to be?
Yeah, so we were in Atlanta doing our live show, and we had a little bit of downtime, in between sound check and actually going on stage. And I came back to say what's up to you guys and y'all's, backstage room, and I saw there was a veggie platter there, and I said something like, I can't see one of these now without thinking about asparagus. And you guys were like, what the hell are you talking about? I couldn't believe that you hadn't seen the video. So I showed it to you and Lovett, then
you guys showed it to Dan and Tommy, and then Tommy liked it so much that he tweeted it. And then that got traction. A bunch of libs on Twitter started tweeting it. And then the Fetterman campaign picked it up, and then they've raised like $500,000 this week just off of this awkward crudité video.
That's how it became viral. Tommy lifted it up again on Twitter after Elijah couldn't believe we hadn't seen it yet, which I hadn't. And turns out most of the country hadn't yet either.
Some would hear this story and say, kudos to Elijah for making this moment happen. And potentially, like, think of all the things Elijah could have done if Jon Fetterman is the 52nd seat in the Senate. Like, just voting rights, more climate. Like, he might have saved the planet. That's one version of the story. The other version of the story is that I have been walking around on this earth for 5 months without knowing about this video. And I'm fucking pissed about it.
Like, how much more do we need to pay? How much closer do we need to pay attention to politics? It is a sickness. We are on on fucking Twitter all the time. We talk about this for hours every week. How did we not see this video?
John, I do a YouTube show once every 2 weeks about crazy Republican videos that is produced by Elijah. How have I not seen it? What is happening?
Do we need yet
I've
another?
definitely sent you this video.
Do we need yet another Slack channel? How many more Slack channels do we need in this company?
Maybe that's the problem. Maybe we have too many Slack channels. There's some fucking French snack channel we're unaware of.
That video stuck in my mind because we were doing research for Political Experts React. Shout out our YouTube. Go subscribe so you never miss an episode. But I feel like I must have sent it to you because that's how I came across it.
If you can prove it through email or Slack or text, I will apologize on next week's pod to you. But up until then, you're on probation as far as I'm concerned.
Anyway, the video, the substance of the video, let's talk about why it has become such a thing, and Jon Fetterman has raised $500,000 off this video. I mean, my initial reaction, just if I'm being honest, was like, who the hell is dipping their asparagus in salsa or their broccoli in guacamole? That is not a crudité platter. I mean, there's calling it crudité versus veggie tray, but for me, that whatever. I've been known to call it crudité myself once in a while. The collection of shit that he got to put on that platter, and then he throws tequila in there. Also, it's Wegmans is the grocery store.
No, it is Wegmans. Yes, he has merged Wegmans and Revner's, two regional grocery stores in the Pennsylvania area, into one called Wegmans, which does not exist.
Wegner's, yeah.
Yes.
Wegner's.
And
the Wegner's, yes.
And the other part of this is, like, he wasn't caught on tape. This was not a like, I caught you on video moment. This is, we produced this video. He says Wegner's. He grabs all this shit in the grocery store. He says it. They put it in a video. They cut the video. They edit the video. They have him saying Wegner's, and they tweet it out. They tweet out the video. They put it out from the campaign. What a campaign! They are great. What a fantastic set of advisors he's got.
I mean, what a world where, as a campaign, you get together and you create the most devastating negative ad in recent memory, but it turns out it's about your own candidate.
It got so bad for Dr. Oz that he was interviewed on Newsmax about this crudité gaffe, and here's what happened. Here's what he said.
And I mean to fixate on it, but I just, for those watching in Pennsylvania, you know how particular many people are about their groceries. What happened with Wegmans and Wegner's? Can you explain that to them?
Yeah, I was exhausted. When you're campaigning 18 hours a day, listen, I've gotten my kids' names wrong as well. I don't think that's a measure of someone's ability to lead the Commonwealth.
I mean, can we invoke a slaughter rule here? What this? Like what? How bad is this going to get? You're getting grilled on Newsmax about the grocery store video that your campaign put out, and you're like, sometimes I forget my kids' names.
I mean, it truly is. Like, he seems like he has never been in a grocery store before. Like, he's like an alien from another planet who all they learned about human civilization was from watching Bravo. Like, I don't even understand.
Look, if Dr. Oz wins this campaign, people are gonna have a great time looking back on listening to this episode, looking at all of our tweets, but then at that point, like, I guess politics is completely broken and nothing matters anymore.
Look, can he still win this race?
Of course,
absolutely, of course he can. We have to say that just so that we can put this version of the clip out after everyone dunks on what happened in the previous 5 minutes. Of course, he can win. He can. Will he? Who knows?
Is he running one of the worst campaigns I have seen in all my years in politics? Absolutely.
Yes. Yes, he is definitely running a terrible campaign. He is a weird man. It's very possible his campaign hates him. Like, there may be moles. There may be moles in that campaign.
He got in a Twitter fight just last night, Wednesday night, with Jon Fetterman over how many homes he owns. And someone said that he owns 10 homes. And Dr. Oz gets on Twitter and he goes, no. 2 homes, 10 properties. Like, and dude, so I did some research. That. Well, you tweeted it. You put it in a tweet, you hit the tweet button, and it went out. Now everyone knows you have 10 properties.
And not even, he probably didn't tweet that. Like, that was not Dr. Oz, because this was a designed attempt to punch back, because he, like, quote tweeted Jon Fetterman. He also attacked Fetterman for living with his parents for a while, because if you're not an out-of-state millionaire, you're somehow a failure, which is not a particularly good message in any state, let alone Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Jon Fetterman living with his parents while he was mayor of a small town and having a very low salary, so his parents helped him out. He was in public service. Yeah, that was what he was doing.
So that tweet was, I'm sure, written by, signed off on by a wide array of people who probably make a lot of money as political consultants and social media types. But the thing that's also is, I was like 9 properties. Like, is he like an investor in like some shopping malls somewhere? No, he owns 10 homes. He just only lives in 2 of them. And it's really an open question if one of the 2 he's referring to is actually the apartment in Pennsylvania in the town whose name he keeps forgetting because he's never really been there.
Elijah, could you do us a favor? And if we ever film a video like that, could you and the video team and the social media team just not put it out?
Oh God, we'll axe it. We will lie. We'll say the file got corrupted. We're not doing our jobs.
Thank you.
If we let that kind of thing get out. I think that Dan's right. I think that there are people on his campaign that might actually hate him.
I think that's true. It could have been infiltrated by some Democrats. Maybe it's like a reverse Project Veritas kind of thing. Anyway, thought you'd all enjoy that. That was fun. That was fun. Thank you, Elijah, for helping the Fetterman campaign and potentially saving the country. And Tommy for tweeting it. Thanks, Alex Holder, for joining the pod today, for talking about his documentary. Everyone go check it out, Unprecedented. And everyone have a great weekend. Enjoy your crudité, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye, everyone.